What if I told you the most powerful man on earth did not want power? He did not chase the throne. He did not scheme for it. He did not fight for it. It was handed to him. And his first reaction was grief. Not celebration. Not ambition. Grief. Because he knew what it meant. He knew that the moment he became Emperor of Rome, he would never again have time to do the one thing he loved most. Think, read, write. Question. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and he ruled the most powerful empire in human history for 19 years. He commanded armies that stretched from Britain to Egypt. He held the fate of millions in his hands. He had more gold, more power, more authority than any man alive. And yet, every single night, after the battles were over, after the meetings were done, after the world had taken everything from him, he sat alone, by candlelight, and wrote in a private journal. Not for fame, not for history, not for anyone to ever read, just for himself, to remind himself how to be a good human being. That journal survived 2,000 years, and today it is considered one of the greatest books ever written. But here is what nobody tells you. The man who wrote those words about peace, strength, and acceptance was living through one of the most painful lives imaginable. War after war after war, plague after plague after plague. Betrayal from the people closest to him, and the loss of child after child after child. He did not write those words because life was easy. He wrote them because life was destroying him, and philosophy was the only thing keeping him standing. This is the real story of Marcus Aurelius, not the quotes, not the Instagram posts, the actual man, the actual pain, the actual battle. And once you hear it, you will never read a single line of his words the same way again. In 121 ad, in the city of Rome, a boy was born into a wealthy and respected family. His name was Marcus Aurelius. His father died when he was just 3 years old. Before he could even form a proper memory of the man, he was raised by his grandfather. And from the very beginning, people noticed something unusual about this boy. He was not interested in the things Roman boys were supposed to be interested in. He was not obsessed with glory, not obsessed with status, not obsessed with becoming powerful. He was obsessed with one thing: truth. By the time he was a young teenager, he had discovered Stoic philosophy, and it changed everything. Stoicism taught that you cannot control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. It taught that pain is not the enemy. Weakness of character is the enemy. It taught that a good life is not a comfortable life. A good life is a virtuous life. Marcus absorbed these ideas the way other boys absorbed war stories. Completely. Totally. With his entire being. And he would spend the rest of his life trying, imperfectly, painfully, honestly, to live them. When Marcus was 17 years old, the Emperor Hadrian noticed him. Hadrian was one of the greatest emperors Rome had ever produced, and he saw something in this quiet, serious, philosophy-obsessed young man that impressed him deeply. He arranged for Marcus to be adopted into the imperial family, to be groomed as a future emperor. Marcus did not ask for this, did not campaign for it, did not want it, but he accepted it, because Stoicism had taught him something powerful. Duty is not optional. If the world places a responsibility in your hands, you carry it, without complaint, without self-pity, without excuse. In 161 ad, after years of preparation, Marcus Aurelius became Emperor of Rome. He was 39 years old. And on the very first day of his reign, he did something that shocked everyone around him. He refused to rule alone. He immediately shared power with his adopted brother Lucius Verus, equal co-emperors. This had almost never been done before. The most powerful position in the world, and his first act was to give half of it away. Because Marcus Aurelius did not want power. He wanted to do what was right. Marcus Aurelius had one dream for his reign: peace. He wanted to govern, to build, to improve the lives of the people under his care, to read and write and think. But fate had other plans. Almost immediately after he became emperor, the wars began. First in the east, a massive invasion from the Parthian Empire threatening Rome's borders. Then in the north, Germanic tribes crossing the Danube and pushing deep into Roman territory. Marcus, who had never trained as a general, who had dedicated his life to philosophy, not warfare, put on his armor and went to the front lines. For most of his reign, nearly 17 out of 19 years, he was not in Rome. He was in a military camp. In the mud, in the cold. Watching men die around him every single day. He hated war. He wrote about it with exhaustion and sorrow. And yet he fought. Every single time. Because he believed that a leader who sends men to die must be willing to stand beside them. And then, as if the wars were not enough, the plague arrived. In 165, a devastating epidemic swept through the Roman Empire. Historians believe it killed between 5 and 10 million people. Entire cities were emptied. Armies were wiped out. Villages disappeared. The people were terrified. They looked to their emperor for answers. And Marcus Aurelius did not have answers. Nobody did. But he stayed. He organized relief efforts. He used his personal funds to help the poor and sick. He did not retreat to a safe palace far from the suffering. He remained present, visible, carrying the weight of an empire that was fracturing around him. In his private journal, the book we now call Meditations, he wrote during these years about loss, about impermanence, about the smallness of human life against the vastness of time. He was not performing strength for his people. He was genuinely wrestling with despair and choosing every single day to get up anyway. But the hardest pain Marcus Aurelius faced was not on the battlefield. It was not in the plague-devastated cities. It was at home. Marcus and his wife Faustina had 14 children together. 14. And most of them died in childhood. Child after child after child. Gone. In an era before modern medicine, childhood death was common. But knowing it is common does not make it hurt less. He buried child after child while simultaneously running an empire and fighting wars on multiple fronts. And through all of it, he kept writing. In his journal, he wrote about grief with a rawness that still feels modern 2,000 years later. He wrote about the Stoic ideal of accepting loss without being destroyed by it. And he admitted, honestly, how difficult that was. He was not pretending to be unaffected. He was fighting every single day to maintain his humanity in the face of relentless loss. And then, the betrayal. In 175 AD, while Marcus was still fighting wars in the north, a general named Avidius Cassius declared himself emperor. Cassius was one of Rome's greatest military commanders, a man Marcus had trusted, a man Marcus had given enormous power and responsibility. And he used that trust to launch a rebellion. When Marcus heard the news, his reaction stunned everyone around him. He was not furious. He was not vengeful. He expressed something closer to sadness. He said he wished he could have met Cassius face to face, not to punish him, but to pardon him and show him that an emperor could forgive. Before Marcus even reached him, Cassius was killed by his own officers. Marcus refused to celebrate. He mourned the man who had betrayed him, because Marcus Aurelius understood something most powerful people never learn. Bitterness destroys the person who carries it far more than the person it is aimed at. Throughout all of this, the wars, the plague, the loss, the betrayal, Marcus kept writing, every night, in his tent, in his palace, wherever he was. He wrote to himself, reminders, instructions, corrections. He was not writing for an audience. He was not writing for history. He was writing because he needed to. Because the gap between the person he wanted to be and the person he sometimes was frustrated him deeply. He wrote things like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." These were not motivational quotes for other people. These were desperate reminders to himself. From a man who was exhausted, who was grieving, who was carrying more weight than any human being should carry, and who refused, every single morning, to put it down. In 180 AD, after 19 years as emperor, Marcus Aurelius died. He was 58 years old. He died not in Rome, but on campaign, still at the front, still doing his duty, still refusing to stop. His last recorded words to the people around him were simple. "Go to the rising sun, for I am already setting." He died the way he had lived, without drama, without self-pity, facing the end with the same quiet courage he had brought to everything else. After his death, the empire he had fought so hard to hold together began to unravel. His son Commodus, the one surviving male heir, proved to be everything Marcus was not: cruel, vain, destructive. Everything Marcus had written about in Meditations, the dangers of ego, the corruption of power, the importance of virtue, his own son embodied the opposite. It was the final, heartbreaking irony of his life. The man who had dedicated everything to being good could not pass that goodness to the person he loved most. And yet, 2,000 years later, Meditations is still in print, still being read, still changing lives. World leaders have kept it on their desks, soldiers have carried it into battle, prisoners have found hope in its pages. Entrepreneurs, athletes, artists, ordinary people going through impossible things have opened that book and felt less alone. Because Marcus Aurelius was not writing from a place of strength and comfort. He was writing from the same place you are in right now. Exhausted, uncertain, trying, and choosing, despite everything, to keep going. The lesson that philosophy of successful people wants to leave with you today is this. Marcus Aurelius had every reason to become bitter, every reason to become cruel, every reason to give up on being good. He lost his children. He lost his friends. He was betrayed by people he trusted. He spent most of his reign in a military camp when all he wanted was to read and think. And through all of it, he kept asking himself one question. Am I being the person I am supposed to be? Not, is the world treating me fairly? Not, do I deserve better than this? Just, am I doing what is right? Right now, in this moment, with what I have. That question, asked honestly every single day, is what made him one of the greatest human beings who ever lived. So the next time life feels like too much, the next time the losses are piling up and the world is not cooperating and you are exhausted in a way that sleep cannot fix, remember Marcus Aurelius. Remember that he sat in a cold military tent, surrounded by war and plague and grief, and wrote himself a reminder to be grateful, to be kind, to keep going. And then he got up the next morning and did exactly that. If this story moved something inside you, subscribe to Philosophy of Successful People. Because here, every single week, we go deep inside the lives of the greatest minds who ever lived. Not just to learn history, but to find the wisdom that changes how you think today. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join thousands of deep thinkers who refuse to stop asking why. See you in the next story.